What would you do if the man who secretly paid your rent suddenly knocked on your door at midnight and told you he hadn't paid it because he felt sorry for you? The widow's daughter had only 3 days left before the landlord threw her out. She had no savings, no family left to help her, and with her mother gone, the tiny house was the only thing she had left. Then, without warning, someone paid the entire rent. She had no idea who did it. Until that evening. A black ranch truck stopped outside her house. The richest rancher in the county stepped out. He was the kind of man people didn't question. The kind who could buy half the town without blinking. And he had never spoken to her before. But now he was standing at her door. When she opened it, he didn't apologize, he didn't explain the rent. Instead, he looked at her for several seconds and asked one question that made her blood run cold. Did your mother ever tell you who your father really was? Why would a millionaire rancher pay a poor widow's rent? And what secret was he carrying about her dead mother? The answer would change her life forever. The landlord didn't knock. He pounded on the door so hard that the old wooden frame shook. 3 days, he shouted from the porch. That's all I'm giving you. She stood frozen in the middle of the tiny living room, one hand gripping the back of an old chair that had belonged to her mother. On the table sat 3 unopened bills, an empty wallet, and a photograph of the woman she had buried less than 2 weeks ago. Her mother had always found a way. Even when there wasn't enough food, she somehow made dinner. Even when the roof leaked, she found a bucket. Even when life became unbearable, she would smile and say, "Tomorrow will be better." But there was no tomorrow she could count on anymore. The landlord pounded again. "You hear me?" She swallowed hard and opened the door. "I just need a little more time." The man folded his arms. "You've already had 2 months. I know. Your mother was behind before she passed. I'm sorry about what happened, but sympathy doesn't pay rent." Her cheeks burned. She wanted to tell him she had spent every dollar she had on her mother's funeral. She wanted to tell him she had sold her mother's jewelry, her own phone, and almost everything of value in the house. But she knew none of it would matter. "How much?" she whispered. "Everything you owe." She looked down. It was more money than she had seen in one place in years. "Don't have it. Then you have 3 days to leave." He turned and walked away. She slowly closed the door. For several seconds, she didn't move. Then her eyes fell on her mother's photograph. "I'm sorry, Mama," she whispered. "I tried." That night she sat alone at the kitchen table, counting the money in an old envelope. $47. That was everything. She placed the bills beside the photograph and stared at them until her vision blurred. There was no family she could call, no husband, no wealthy relative, no one, or at least, that was what she believed. The next morning, something strange happened. When she went to the landlord's office to ask for another week, he looked at her with an expression she couldn't understand. "You don't need another week." She frowned. "What?" He pushed a receipt across the desk. "Your rent has been paid." She stared at the number. Every dollar. The full amount. Her hands began to tremble. "Who paid this?" The landlord shook his head. "He asked me not to tell you, please." The man hesitated. Then he looked toward the window and lowered his voice. "Someone with a lot of money." She stared at him. "Who?" The landlord finally said a name that made her heart stop. "Mr. Cole. The millionaire rancher, the most powerful man in the county, and a man she had never spoken to in her entire life." She walked out of the landlord's office with the receipt still clutched in her hand. Mr. Cole. The name followed her all the way home. Everyone in the county knew him. He owned thousands of acres beyond the eastern hills, cattle as far as the eye could see, and a ranch house so large people joked that it had more rooms than the courthouse. But why would a man like that care about her? She had never met him. As far as she knew, he didn't even know she existed. She stopped halfway down the road and looked back at the landlord's office. There had to be some mistake. Maybe another woman had the same name. Maybe Mr. Cole had paid someone else's rent. Maybe the landlord had misunderstood. She returned to the office. "You're certain it was him?" The landlord sighed. "I'm certain." "How do you know?" "He came here himself." Her heart skipped. "He came here?" "Yesterday afternoon." "Did he say why?" The landlord shook his head. "He only told me the rent needed to be paid before the deadline." "Did he say anything about me?" For the first time, the landlord looked uncomfortable. He asked one question. What question? He stared at her. He asked whether you were still living in your mother's house. A strange chill moved through her. Why would he ask that? I don't know. She left without another word. By sunset, she was back home, but the mystery had only grown. She opened every drawer her mother had ever used. She searched through old papers, photographs, receipts, and letters. Nothing. There was no mention of Cole, not even once. Then she found an old photograph tucked inside a book. Her mother was standing beside a group of ranch workers. She recognized the ranch, immediately Cole Ranch, but there was something else. In the background stood a much younger man. She stared at his face. She had seen him before, not in person, in another photograph, the same eyes, the same crooked smile. Her mother had once kept a picture of that man hidden inside her bedroom drawer. Her hands began to shake. Before she could examine the photograph further, headlights suddenly swept across the front window. She froze. Large black ranch truck had stopped outside. The engine remained running. Someone opened the driver's door. She stepped away from the window. A tall man in a dark coat walked toward her. House. She recognized him. Immediately, Mr. Cole, the millionaire rancher. Himself. He climbed the porch steps and stopped directly in front of her door. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then came 3 slow knocks. Her heart pounded. She reached for the doorknob, and before she opened it, the rancher spoke through the door. I know this is late, he said quietly, but there's something your mother never told you. Her fingers tightened around the handle. What? There was a long silence. Then he said the words that would destroy everything she thought she knew about her family. Your father wasn't the man you were told he was. She slowly opened the door. Mr. Cole stood beneath the porch light, his hat held tightly in one hand. Up close, he looked older than she had expected, perhaps in his late 50s, with silver beginning to show at his temples. But there was something about his expression that frightened her more than his reputation ever could. He looked at her as if he had been searching for this moment for years. What did you just say about my father? He glanced toward the empty road. May I come inside? No. The answer came before she could think. He nodded, almost as if he expected it. Fair enough. She kept one hand on the door. You paid my rent? Yes. Why? He looked directly into her eyes. Because your mother asked me to. Her breath caught. My mother? She came to see me 3 weeks before she died. The words hit her like a slap. My mother never left this house. She did. She was sick. I know. Then why didn't she tell me? Mr. Cole lowered his eyes. Because she was afraid. Afraid of what? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached inside his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Her name was written across the front, in her mother's handwriting. She immediately recognized it. Her hands began trembling. She gave this to me, he said. She told me not to open it. She said it belonged to you. She reached for the envelope, but he didn't release it immediately. There's something you need to understand first. What? Once you read this, there's no going back. She stared at him. I've already lost my mother. What else can I lose? His expression softened. More than you realize. Finally, he handed her the envelope. She tore it open. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The message was short. My daughter, if you're reading this, then I didn't have enough time to tell you the truth. Her eyes filled with tears, she continued reading. There are things I kept from you, because I believed they would protect you. Her breathing became unsteady. Then she reached the final line. If Mr. Cole comes to you, listen to him. He is the only man I trust to tell you what really happened. She slowly lowered the letter. Tell me. Mr. Cole stepped closer. Your mother worked for my family when she was 17. She stared at him. That doesn't explain anything. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. He looked toward the photograph she had left on the table, then back at her. Because your mother didn't just work for my family. He paused. She was in love with someone from it. The room suddenly felt silent. Who? Mr. Cole's eyes filled with regret. My older brother. She couldn't speak. Then he added something that made her blood run cold. And he wasn't the man your mother married. She stared at Mr. Cole, unable to understand what she had just heard. My mother was in love with your brother? Mr. Cole nodded slowly, but that still doesn't explain why she hid everything from me. It will. He looked toward the old photograph, lying on the table. Your mother believed that keeping you away from my family was the only way to keep you safe. Safe from who? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat again and pulled out a small brass key. This belonged to your mother. She recognized it instantly. She had seen that key hanging from a thin chain around her mother's neck for years. What does it open? A box. What box? One she asked me to keep hidden. Her heart began pounding. Where is it? Mr. Cole looked toward the hallway. Your mother never told me where she hid it. She only said that if anything happened to her, you would eventually find it. She hurried into her mother's bedroom. Mr. Cole followed but stopped at the doorway. She searched the closet first. Nothing. Then the dresser. Nothing. Finally, she noticed something beneath. The loose floorboard beside the bed. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it upward. A small wooden box was hidden. Underneath, she stared at it. The key fit perfectly. Click, the lock opened. Inside were several old photographs, a faded ranch branding iron, a silver necklace, and a sealed letter. But the photograph on top made her stop breathing. It showed her mother standing beside a young man, the same man she had seen in the photograph earlier. The same eyes, the same smile, and beside him stood a much younger Mr. Cole. She turned the photograph over. 3 words were written on the back. Our daughter. Amelia, she dropped it. Our daughter? Mr. Cole stepped closer. He picked up the photograph and stared at it for the first time. The powerful rancher looked completely broken. I was afraid this day would come. She looked at him. What does this mean? He didn't answer. She grabbed the sealed letter. This is mine. Mr. Cole nodded. She opened it with shaking fingers. The first sentence destroyed the last piece of certainty she had. My darling girl, there is something about your birth I could never tell you, she read. Faster. Her mother explained that the man she had believed was her father had agreed to raise her after a terrible scandal, but her biological father had been someone else, someone connected to the Cole family, someone who had disappeared. Before she was born, she looked up. Where is he? Mr. Cole's face went pale. He's dead, her voice cracked. Then why did you come here now? Mr. Cole looked at the letter again. Because your mother made me promise something before she died. What promise? He slowly met her eyes. To tell you who your father really was. Then, he whispered the name, and she realized the man standing before her had been hiding the truth for 26 years. She stood completely still. The name Mr. Cole had whispered seemed to echo through the room. Say it again. Mr. Cole looked at her with tired eyes. Ethan Cole. She shook her head. No, your father was my older brother. She stepped backward until her shoulders touched the wall. That's impossible. I wish it were. My mother told me my father died before I was born. He did. Then why did everyone lie to me? Mr. Cole took a slow breath. Because the truth would have destroyed more than one family. She stared at him. What happened? He walked toward the window and looked out into the darkness. My brother Ethan was supposed to inherit the ranch. He was smart, stubborn, and reckless. Your mother met him when she was working here. They fell in love. He paused. But my father hated the relationship. Why? Because your mother had nothing. Her eyes filled with tears. They thought she wasn't good enough. They told Ethan to leave her. He refused. Mr. Cole's voice became quieter. When your mother became pregnant, everything changed. She covered her mouth. I was the baby? Yes. Then what happened? My father threatened to disown Ethan. He told him he would never inherit the ranch if he married your mother. And Ethan chose the ranch? No. Mr. Cole turned toward her. He chose you. She stared at him. He planned to take your mother and you somewhere far away. But before he could, there was an accident. Her breathing stopped. What accident? His truck went off the mountain road. Silence filled the room. He died that night. She looked down at the letter in her hands. And my mother? She was devastated. She believed the Cole family would take you away from her, so she disappeared. Then why did she marry the man I called my father? To give you a name, a home, protection. Tears rolled down her cheeks. All these years. I know. She turned toward him angrily. You knew I was Ethan's daughter? I knew. You watched me grow up. I kept my distance because your mother demanded it. Then why pay my rent? Mr. Cole's expression changed. Because your mother came to me before she died. He reached into his coat and pulled out another folded paper. She told me she had spent her entire life protecting you, but she knew she wouldn't be here forever. He handed it to her. She opened it. Please don't give her money because you feel sorry for her. Give her the chance her father wanted her to have. Her tears fell onto the paper. Then she read the final sentence. And if anyone tries to take her home away from her, protect her. She looked up. Who would try to take my home? Mr. Cole's face suddenly hardened. My family. Before she could ask why, headlights appeared outside. Several vehicles were coming up the road. Mr. Cole stepped toward the window. His expression turned serious. They found you, she whispered. Who? He looked at her. The people your mother spent 26 years hiding you from. The vehicles stopped outside the house one after another. 3 black SUVs. She stared through the curtains, her heart racing. Who are they? Mr. Cole didn't answer. He moved toward the front door and quietly locked it. Then he looked at her. Stay behind me. A man stepped out of the first SUV, wore an expensive black coat and carried himself like someone who had never been told no. 2 other men followed him. The stranger walked toward the porch. 3 hard knocks shook the door. Open up. Cole, she looked at Mr. Cole. Who is that? My nephew. Why is he here? Mr. Cole's jaw tightened. Because he knows about you. The knocking came again. Uncle Charles. I know she's in there. She froze. Her name was never mentioned. But somehow the man outside knew exactly who she was. Mr. Cole stepped closer to the door. You have no business here, the man laughed. You should have stayed out of this, she whispered. What does he want? Mr. Cole looked at her. The ranch, she frowned. What does that have to do with me? Everything. He lowered his voice. Your father's share of the Cole estate was never legally transferred after his death. Her eyes widened. You mean... You may have inherited it. Before she could respond, the door suddenly shook under a heavy blow. Mr. Cole grabbed his phone. Call the sheriff. I already did. The voice came from outside. Her stomach dropped. The nephew laughed. You really think the sheriff is going to help you? Mr. Cole remained silent. Then the man outside spoke again. Your mother made one mistake. What mistake? She asked before she could stop herself. Silence. Then the answer came. She thought hiding you would keep the inheritance safe. Her face went pale. Inheritance? Mr. Cole closed his eyes. The estate your father left. Behind is worth millions. She stared at him. I don't want his money. You may not. He looked toward the door. But they do. Another violent odor shook the house. The old wooden frame cracked. Mr. Cole moved her toward the back. Hallway, go. I'm not leaving. You... After I know, he grabbed her hand. Listen to me. Your mother spent 26 years protecting you. I won't let her sacrifice be meaningless. She hesitated, then she heard glass breaking. In the front room, someone had entered the house. Mr. Cole pushed her toward a narrow doorway hidden behind an old bookshelf. There's a passage here. She stared at him. You knew about this? Your mother did too. He opened the hidden door. Before she stepped inside, she turned back. What about you? I'll handle them. She shook her head. You paid my rent. You found me. You told me the truth. I'm not leaving you. Mr. Cole gave her a faint smile. You're more like your father than you realize. Suddenly, footsteps thundered down the hallway. The passage door began to close, and just before it shut, she heard the stranger shout, Find the girl. She knows where the original deed is. She stood in the darkness of the hidden passage, barely breathing. The words echoed in her mind. The original deed. She had never heard of any deed. Behind the wall, she could hear men moving through the house. Then Mr. Cole's voice rose sharply. You're not touching anything in this house. A man laughed. You're still protecting her? She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with it. The daughter pressed her hand against the cold stone wall. Her mother had known about this passage, which meant she had known there was something worth hiding. She moved deeper into the narrow tunnel. At the end was a small wooden door. She pushed it open. It led into an abandoned storage room behind the house. Dust covered everything. Old farming equipment stood against the walls, and stacks of wooden crates filled the corners. She looked around desperately. Then she remembered the photograph from her mother's box. The ranch brand. She pulled it from her pocket. There was a small symbol carved into its handle, a circle surrounding 3 lines. She suddenly noticed the same symbol carved into one of the wooden crates. Her heart began pounding. She pulled the crate open. Inside were old documents wrapped in faded cloth. She unfolded the first one. Nothing. The second was an old ranch inventory. The third made her stop. It was a legal document dated 26 years earlier. At the bottom was a signature, Ethan Cole. Her hands trembled. She kept reading. The document stated that Ethan had transferred ownership of a significant portion of the Cole estate to his unborn child. Her eyes widened. The rancher hadn't been protecting her from the family. He had been protecting what belonged to her. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Mr. Cole stood in the doorway. His coat was torn and there was blood on his forehead. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "I'm fine." She held up the document. "You knew about this?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because the original deed was missing." She looked down at the papers. "But I found it." Mr. Cole stepped closer. "No." She frowned. "This isn't the original." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "The document proves your father intended to leave the estate to you, but the original deed contains the legal transfer." "Where is it?" Mr. Cole looked toward the house. "They've been searching for it for 26 years. "Why?" "Because whoever controls that deed controls the ranch." She suddenly understood. The millionaire rancher hadn't paid her rent because he felt sorry for her. He had been buying time, protecting her until he could find the one document that could expose the people who had stolen her inheritance. Then a sound came from the passage. Footsteps. Someone had found them. Mr. Cole quickly took the papers from her. "We have to go." But before they could move, a voice came from the darkness. "You won't need to." A man stepped into the doorway holding an old leather case. The daughter stared at it. She recognized it immediately. It had belonged to her mother. The stranger smiled. "Your mother kept the original deed somewhere much closer than you ever imagined." He opened the case, and inside was a document bearing her father's signature. She stared at the document inside the leather case. Her father's signature was unmistakable. Ethan Cole. For 26 years, everyone had believed he had died leaving nothing behind. But this single piece of paper could change everything. The stranger smiled. "You finally understand." Mr. Cole stepped between them. "Give me the deed." The man laughed. "You still think this is about money, Charles? What else could it be? It's about control." He looked at the daughter. "Your father left this ranch to you, but your grandfather changed the records after Ethan died. The family kept the truth buried because they couldn't accept that everything would eventually belong to a woman they considered an outsider." She looked at Mr. Cole. "Is that true?" He nodded. "Yes." Her eyes filled with tears. "All these years my mother was blamed for being poor. She wasn't poor because she failed," Mr. Cole said quietly. "She was kept poor because powerful people wanted her to disappear." The stranger suddenly threw the deed toward the daughter. She caught it. "Read the final page." Her hands shook as she unfolded it. There, beneath Ethan's signature, was a final statement. "To my daughter, wherever life takes her, this land is yours. Not because of our family name, but because I want you to have the freedom nobody could give your mother." She covered her mouth. Her father had known she might never meet him, yet he had thought about her. Mr. Cole looked away, fighting back tears. "He loved you before he ever saw your face." She looked at him. "Then why did you never tell me?" "Because Your mother begged me to wait until you were old enough to decide what kind of life you wanted. She slowly folded the deed. I know what kind of life I want. Mr. Cole looked surprised. I don't want revenge. The stranger laughed. You should. She turned toward him. No. She held the deed against her chest. I want the truth. Then she walked outside. The ranch employees had gathered near the house. The sheriff had finally arrived, and behind him stood several members of the Cole family. For the first time, she didn't feel like the poor widow's daughter. She felt like the woman her father had written that letter for. The sheriff examined the deed. Then he looked at the older members of the family. This document changes everything. The nephew's face went pale. No. The daughter looked at him calmly. You came here thinking I was someone with nothing. She glanced toward the little house where her mother had raised her. But my mother gave me something you could never take. What? She smiled through her tears, her courage. Mr. Cole stepped beside her. Then he handed her the keys to the largest ranch house. She stared at them. I can't take this. You're not taking it, he said. You're coming home. She looked toward the ranch stretching across the hills. For 26 years she had believed she had no family. Now she finally understood. The millionaire rancher hadn't knocked on her door because he felt sorry for a poor woman who couldn't pay her rent. He knocked because he had made a promise to her dying mother, and because after 26 years of secrets, the daughter of Ethan Cole had finally come home.